Fear Zone, your channel of real horror stories. Good evening everyone, and now, let's go to today's story, which is from a boy, who calls himself Helio, and this happened to him, in the city of Patrocinio, which is in Brazil, and at that time it was in the year 2010, the young Helio, was just a teenager. And today I'm going to talk about the experience that my family went through at dawn, when the werewolf came to cause terror on my ranch, but the creature wanted to destroy us. And it all starts like this. I live in a rural region of my city, where there are many ranches, and in this place, there are many forests, and at night, everything is dark near my residence. But other than that, and already talking about my account, is that at that time, I was a teenager, and I studied at night at school, and when I finished my class, I went back to my house, and usually, I arrived at my place at almost midnight. At that time, I lived with my younger brother, and with my father and mother. However, what happened one night, when I was returning from school on foot, on a dirt road, and it was that soon, I arrived at my house, and I went to eat a snack, and then I noticed, that my younger brother, was nowhere, and the kid was gone. Even so, I went to ask my mother about my brother, and she told me, that my brother went out of hiding about 10 minutes ago, entered a vacant lot that was next to our backyard, to look for his dog, and I was nervous about this information, of him having entered the middle of the dark forest, at that time without warning anyone. With that, I went out in my yard, and started calling my brother, to see if he would answer, but nothing happened. Well, I started to get worried, and I approached the barbed wire fence that surrounded my land, so I could go after him, but I couldn't find him, and in this place of my ranch, it was very dark, and I couldn't see anything. But it didn't take long, and it was at that moment, that I got very scared, because I started to hear a screaming in the middle of the bush, and it was my brother, and he was coming running, but I was amazed, because he passed by me asking for help, and at that time, I was impressed when I saw, what my brother was running away from, because it was a figure of a huge dog was running, and that chased him. My reaction at that time, was that I picked up some stones quickly on the ground, and when that creature passed in front of me, on the other side of the fence, I started to stone him. In that beast stopped running. He was looking at me with a face of anger, but to my surprise, this animal came at me, and then he tried to pass through the barbed wire fence, and that seemed to want to catch me. But luckily for me, this animal got tangled up in the fence, and when I looked ahead, I also saw my brother going under the fence and into our yard, and I was relieved. At that time, while the beast was growling with anger, to enter our residence, but he was tangled in the fence, and trying to get loose, I took advantage, and not to let this beast enter my yard, so I started throwing more stones at him, so that this animal would not pass. But I went to pick up more stones on the ground, but something strange was happening, because this animal escaped from the barbed wire, and he managed to hold on to the fence with his hands, as if it were a person, and then, to my amazement, it stood upright, only on 2 legs, and that to me, seemed to be a real werewolf, because the head resembled a deformed dog, and it had big pointed ears, with a dog's muzzle, but its teeth were big, and what gave amazement, was light that the eyes of this werewolf had, and this beast, practically was the size of a man. At that time, when this creature stood there, on the other side of the fence, my father appeared in the yard. He, seeing the danger, ordered us to get into the house quickly. Well, lucky for me, this creature stood there trying to find a way to get through the fence, but thankfully, this beast had no dexterity and ability to get through our fence. In this, we returned to our house, and closed all the entrances, but the problem with all this, is that my father had no firearm, and that beast was still prowling near our land. Soon after, each of our family, we took some wooden cables, and we were prepared to defend ourselves from this scary werewolf, in case that creature decided to try to invade our residence. However, when a few hours passed, and we were still awake, the dawn began to end, and we cursed at my younger brother, and he started to apologize, but he said that he went after his dog, who had disappeared from the yard, and so, he walked around the woods, and soon, he began to hear the dogs of the neighboring ranch barking a lot. Towards the vegetation, my brother stopped and looked, and he saw the figure of this werewolf hidden near the ranch fence, and the creature stood still and just looking at him, and so, that he saw the glow of the creature's eyes. With that, my brother started to run to our house, but this beast came after him, and luckily I arrived to save him. But other than that, what happened, already when it had passed 4 o'clock in the morning, is that the dogs of a nearby house began to bark with great anger to the forest, and this neighbor turned on the light of his yard. He left with a shotgun in hand, and went to the back of his yard, and after more or less about 5 minutes, this guy appeared again, entered his house. The fact is, it was dawn, and my mother told my father to get a gun quickly, otherwise she wouldn't sleep in our house anymore. Of course, my father, even though he did not like firearms, he ended up buying a hunting rifle, and with that, my family was already more peaceful, because now, we had how to fight any danger that came to afflict our home. Other than that, when it got to the afternoon, I went along with my father to the neighbor's residence, who went out armed at dawn. So we got there, we talked to this neighbor if he had seen a huge creature nearby. This man said he didn't see any creature. But what this neighbor said, that he went out at that time, because his dogs were barking a lot at the bush around his house, and he decided to look at what was going on, and that's when this man had a surprise, because our neighbor started hearing some moans from a person in the bush, and so he started looking, and suddenly this moaning stopped, and soon, a guy appeared in the bush, and he seemed to be naked and without clothes. But this suspicious guy ended up disappearing through the dark forest, and he seemed to be very scared. But my neighbor said that he marked the appearance of this man's face. Of course, we told this neighbor what we had been through at dawn, and that we were almost attacked by a werewolf, and now, I also don't know if this naked guy in the bush had anything to do with the creature, but the two appeared at the same dawn, so for me, for now, I suspect that this suspicious man was the werewolf, and he came back in the form of a man, when the neighbor found him when the day dawned. The fact is, that still my family was traumatized, with the appearance of the werewolf, that brought a scary night to my family, and at least, we were taking care at night, and my father started to come with me when I returned from school at night, but thankfully, I have not seen this creature again, nor do I want to. But I know that this danger still exists, because I live in a place with a lot of farms and ranches, and in these places sometimes, a werewolf can always appear. And my brother's dog that disappeared, the day the werewolf appeared, he returned to our house. And what do you think, the guy who appeared naked in the middle of the forest, when it was dawn, was that guy the one who became a werewolf? Until today I think so, and for a while we were looking for some injured suspect around the village, but we did not find this suspect. Good night. Well guys, thanks for watching the video, and if you liked this horror story, leave your like, and subscribe to the channel to receive new werewolf stories.